My phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, its shrill tone cutting through the peaceful silence of my living room like a blade through silk. I had been reading Pride and Prejudice for the 100th time, savoring Elizabeth Bennet's fierce independence, when Dabney's voice shattered my afternoon tranquility. "Carolyn," she began without preamble, her tone carrying that particular blend of condescension and authority that had become her trademark over the past 3 years. "We need to talk about Christmas arrangements." I set down my worn copy of Austen, marking my place with the pressed violet bookmark my late husband had given me decades ago. The December light filtered through my lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the polished hardwood floors of the home where I had raised Wade as a single mother, where every piece of furniture held a memory, where every photograph told a story of sacrifice and love. "Of course, dear," I replied, though something in her tone already set my nerves on edge. "I've been looking forward to celebrating with you and the children." Dabney's laugh was sharp, brittle. "That's what I'm calling about. If you want to join us for Christmas dinner this year, you'll need to earn your place at the table." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Earn my place at my own family's Christmas celebration. "I'm not sure I understand," I said carefully, though a cold dread was already settling in my stomach like a stone. "It's simple, Carolyn. Wade and I have been discussing this, and we've decided it's time you contributed something meaningful to our family gatherings instead of just showing up and criticizing everything we do." My grip tightened on the phone receiver. In all my 74 years, through raising a child alone after my husband's sudden death, through working double shifts as a nurse to pay for Wade's education, through countless sacrifices both large and small, I had never been spoken to with such casual cruelty. "Dabney, I've never criticized." "Haven't you?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Last Thanksgiving you questioned our parenting when we told Emery she couldn't have seconds on dessert. At Beau's birthday party, you undermined us by bringing that expensive art set after we specifically said no elaborate gifts. And don't get me started on your comments about our new house." Each accusation felt like a physical blow. The parenting comment. I had simply suggested that perhaps a 6-year-old could have another small slice of cake on Thanksgiving. The art set. It was a modest $20 watercolor kit, because Beau had shown such interest in painting. And the house comments. I had never said anything negative about their beautiful new home, only mentioned that it seemed quite large for their needs. But I could see how Dabney had twisted each innocent moment into evidence of my supposed interference. "Dabney, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." She cut me off again. "Here's what's going to happen. If you want to be part of Christmas dinner, you'll come to our house bright and early on December 24th with cleaning supplies. You'll help me prepare the house for our guests, you'll assist with all the cooking and cleaning, and maybe, just maybe, you'll earn the right to sit at our table." The silence that followed was deafening. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Calloway walking her little terrier, the same route she'd taken every afternoon for the past 15 years. The world continued spinning, normal and peaceful, while my own world crumbled around me. "Did you hear me, Carolyn?" Dabney's voice had taken on a sing-song quality that made my skin crawl. "Wade agrees completely. He says it's about time you contributed something useful instead of just being a burden." Burden. My own son saw me as a burden. The boy I had held through countless nights when fever ravaged his small body. The child I had read to until my voice was hoarse, who had fallen asleep in my arms while I worked night shifts at the hospital. The young man whose college graduation I had attended alone, tears of pride streaming down my face as he walked across that stage. The groom whose hand I had kissed before placing it in Dabney's at their wedding, believing I was gaining a daughter. "Besides," Dabney continued, seemingly oblivious to my silence, "this year's dinner is going to be at our new house, the one we bought without any help from you. By the way, we've invited my mother, Renata, and she'll be staying for the whole week to help with the children and the preparations. So if you want to see Emery, Beau, and Tate open their presents, you know exactly what you need to do." Renata, of course, Dabney's mother, who had seamlessly inserted herself into every important moment of my grandchildren's lives. School plays, birthday parties, soccer games. Renata was there for all of it, while I received carefully orchestrated excuses about why my presence wasn't needed. Well, Dabney demanded, are you going to come clean, or would you rather spend Christmas alone in your little old house, watching soap operas and feeling sorry for yourself? My little old house. The home I had purchased with my nursing salary after years of saving every penny. The house where I had created a sanctuary of love and learning for Wade. The house where every room held memories of bedtime stories, homework sessions and heart-to-heart talks. The house where I had nursed Wade through chickenpox, celebrated his first job, and danced with him in the kitchen when he got engaged. Something inside me crystallized in that moment. Not anger, that would come later. Not hurt, I was too shocked for that yet. It was something colder, sharper. It was the moment a woman realizes she has been sleepwalking through her own degradation. Enjoy your Christmas, Dabney, I said, my voice calm and clear. What? I said, enjoy your Christmas. Have a wonderful celebration. And with that I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was profound. I sat in my favorite armchair, the deep green velvet one that had been my mother's, and stared at the phone as if it were a foreign object. My hands were trembling, not from fear or sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Pure, unadulterated rage. But alongside the rage was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the garden I had tended for 30 years. The rose bushes were dormant now, but come spring they would burst into glorious bloom. The small stone pathway that Wade had helped me lay when he was 12 years old wound through the carefully planned beds. The fountain where birds came to drink every morning sat silent now, but it would sing again when the weather warmed. Everything was in its place. Everything had its season, its purpose, its time to flourish. Everything except me, it seemed. I moved to my desk in the corner of the living room and pulled open the top drawer. Inside, beneath a stack of paid bills and thank you notes from the Children's Hospital where I had volunteered for the past 5 years, lay a cream-colored folder I had placed there 2 months ago. Inside were plane tickets. Destination: Turks and Caicos, a private resort where I had booked a luxury suite for 7 days, from December 23rd through December 30th. I had made the reservation after the last humiliation, when Dabney had forgotten to invite me to Tate's preschool Christmas play. And I had only learned about it when Emery mentioned it during a brief phone call. I had told myself then that I was being dramatic, that I should cancel the trip, that family was more important than pride. But I had kept the reservation. Some part of me knowing this moment would eventually come. While they waited for me to show up with mop and bucket, I would be sipping champagne on a private beach. While Dabney wondered where her unpaid servant was, I would be getting a massage overlooking crystal-clear waters. While they sat down to their Christmas dinner, I would be dining on lobster and caviar under a canopy of stars. The irony was delicious. I picked up the phone and dialed the resort's concierge service. Turks and Caicos Paradise Resort, this is Victoria speaking. How may I assist you? This is Carolyn Whitfield. I have a reservation beginning December 23rd. And I'd like to confirm some additional services. Of course, Mrs. Whitfield, I see your booking here. How can we enhance your stay? I'd like to arrange for a professional photographer to be available for the duration of my visit. I want the best pictures of my life. Absolutely. Our resort photographer, Tobias, is exceptional. Would you like him available for specific sessions, or on call for spontaneous moments? Both, I replied, feeling a smile spread across my face for the first time in months. I want to document everything. The morning of December 23rd arrived with a clarity that felt almost supernatural. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety or restlessness, but from pure anticipation. Today was the first day of my new life. I had spent the previous evening packing with the kind of care I hadn't taken with anything in years. Into my suitcase went the coral silk dress I had bought but never worn, thinking it too bright for a woman my age. The emerald green evening gown that had hung in my closet for 2 years, purchased on a whim and then dismissed as too elegant for my quiet life. The white linen pants and flowing tops that Dabney had once commented made me look like I was trying too young. Well, today I was trying everything. My phone had rung exactly 17 times since I hung up on Dabney the day before. 17 desperate calls from my son, my daughter-in-law, and several numbers I didn't recognize. I had answered none of them. Instead, I had spent the evening writing letters. Not angry screeds or emotional outpourings, but carefully crafted communications that would be delivered at precisely the right moments. One letter was addressed to Loretta, my older sister, who lived across the country. We spoke infrequently but had maintained the comfortable connection of women who had weathered life's storms together. In it, I detailed the truth about Dabney's manipulations and Wade's complicity, asking her to be ready for the inevitable family phone calls that would come. Another letter was for Hollis, my neighbor of 20 years. Hollis had witnessed enough of my family dynamics to understand what was really happening, and I knew I could trust him to handle any emergency situations that might arise in my absence. The third letter was the most difficult to write. It was addressed to my grandchildren Emery, Beau, and Tate, though I knew they wouldn't read it for years, if ever. In it, I tried to explain that sometimes loving someone means refusing to accept treatment that diminishes you, that walking away isn't abandonment but self-preservation, and that I hoped someday they would understand the difference. I had sealed all 3 letters in my desk drawer, along with detailed instructions about my affairs, should anything happen to me. At 74, I had no illusions about my mortality, but I had every intention of living my remaining years on my own terms. The taxi arrived at precisely 8 a.m. As I locked my front door, I noticed Mrs. Calloway peering through her curtains, probably wondering why I was leaving so early with luggage. By tomorrow she would understand. By tomorrow the entire neighborhood would understand. The drive to the airport was peaceful. The taxi driver, a kind Jamaican man named Winston, made pleasant conversation about the weather and the holidays. "Going somewhere warm for Christmas?" he asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "The warmest place I could find," I replied, watching the familiar streets of my city fade behind us. "Family vacation." Paused, considering how to answer. "A solo adventure. I'm treating myself." Winston nodded approvingly. "Good for you. My grandmother, she's about your age and she still travels all over the world. Says she spent too many years taking care of everyone else to stop living now." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." "The wisest. She always says, 'Winston, you can't pour from an empty cup.' Sounds like you're filling yours back up." If only he knew how empty my cup had become. At the airport, I moved through security with the calm efficiency of someone who had made a decision and was seeing it through. I had flown very little in my life. A few trips to visit Loretta, Wade's college graduation, one disastrous vacation with Wade and Dabney early in their marriage where I had felt like an unwelcome third wheel the entire time. But today, walking through the terminal in my comfortable traveling clothes with my small-wheeled suitcase, I felt like a different person entirely. I felt like Carolyn Whitfield. Not Wade's mother or Dabney's mother-in-law or the children's grandmother. Just Carolyn, a woman with her own desires, her own plans, her own life to live. The first-class seat was an indulgence I had never allowed myself before. I had worked as a registered nurse for 45 years, saving every penny I could, living modestly, denying myself small luxuries so Wade could have everything he needed. My financial advisor had been after me for years to spend some of my accumulated savings on myself, but I had always found reasons to wait, to save for the next emergency, to ensure Wade and the children would be provided for. But what was the point of providing for people who saw you as nothing more than a walking bank account and unpaid servant? As the plane lifted off, I watched my city shrink below me. Somewhere down there, Dabney was probably wondering why I hadn't arrived with my cleaning supplies. Somewhere down there, Wade was probably calling my house, getting no answer, beginning to panic. Let them panic. For the first time in years, their emergency was not my responsibility. The flight attendant, an elegant woman about my age named Carmen, brought me a glass of champagne before we had even reached cruising altitude. "Celebrating something special?" she asked with a warm smile. "My independence," I replied, raising the glass in a small toast. Carmen's smile widened. The best kind of celebration. Enjoy every minute of it. As we flew south toward paradise, I pulled out my phone and opened the social media app one had barely used in years. My profile was practically abandoned. A few photos of the grandchildren from their younger years, some pictures of my garden, nothing that really represented who I was or who I was becoming. That was about to change. I took my first photo right there in the airplane seat. Me with a champagne glass, clouds visible through the window, a genuine smile on my face that I hadn't seen in years. The caption was simple but meaningful. Sometimes the best journey is the one you take alone. Off to find myself at 74 #new beginnings. I posted it before I could second-guess myself. The responses began almost immediately. Old friends from nursing school I had lost touch with, neighbors, former colleagues, all commenting on how radiant I looked, how exciting my adventure seemed, how proud they were of me for taking this step. But I wasn't waiting for their responses. I was waiting for other reactions, the ones that would really matter. My phone remained silent for the rest of the flight. No calls from Wade, no frantic messages from Dabney. Either they hadn't discovered my absence yet, or they were too shocked to respond. Both possibilities filled me with satisfaction. The resort was even more beautiful than the photographs had promised. As my taxi wound through the tropical landscape toward the Paradise Resort, I felt like I was entering another world entirely. Palm trees swayed in the warm breeze, their fronds catching the golden afternoon light. Flowers in colors I had never seen before lined the roadway, brilliant oranges and shocking pinks and purples so deep they seemed to glow. "First time in the islands?" asked my driver, a cheerful local man named Marcus. "First time anywhere like this," I admitted. "I've spent most of my life taking care of other people. This is my first real adventure." Marcus grinned at me in the rearview mirror. "Well, you picked the right place for an adventure. This island, it changes people. You'll see." The resort entrance was breathtaking. A sweeping drive lined with royal palms that opened onto a stunning infinity pool blending seamlessly with the ocean beyond. The lobby was open air, decorated with local artwork, filled with the sound of gentle music and the distant crash of waves. Mrs. Whitfield. Victoria, the concierge I had spoken with on the phone, approached with a warm smile. "Welcome to paradise. How was your flight?" "Liberating," I replied, and meant it. Victoria laughed. "I love that. Tobias, our photographer, is standing by whenever you're ready, and I've arranged for your suite to have champagne and tropical fruit waiting. Is there anything else you need to make your stay perfect?" I thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. I'd like to order room service for my first night. Something I've never had before." "What did you have in mind?" "Lobster. The most expensive lobster you have." Victoria's smile grew wider. "I think we're going to get along beautifully." My suite was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto a private terrace with unobstructed ocean views. The bed was enormous, draped in white linens that looked like clouds. Fresh orchids graced every surface, and the promised champagne and fruit arrangement sat waiting on the dining table. But what struck me most was the silence. Not the silence of loneliness or emptiness, but the silence of peace. No demands, no criticism, no walking on eggshells, no constantly anticipating the next slight or humiliation. Just quiet, blessed, healing quiet. I unpacked slowly, hanging up the beautiful clothes I had brought, placing my toiletries in the marble bathroom, arranging my few personal items on the dresser. Everything about the process felt ceremonial, like I was creating a shrine to the woman I was becoming. When I was finished, I changed into the coral silk dress and stood before the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was someone I hadn't seen in years, someone with bright eyes and straight shoulders and an expression of quiet confidence. My phone buzzed. A text from Wade. "Mom, where are you? Dabney said you were supposed to be here hours ago. Please call me." I turned the phone face down on the dresser and walked out onto my terrace. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, waves rolling in with hypnotic regularity. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that no artist could truly capture. A warm breeze carried the scent of salt and tropical flowers. I had been so focused on other people's needs for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist in a beautiful moment without having to justify or explain or apologize for it. There was a soft knock at my door. When I opened it, I found a young man with kind eyes and professional camera equipment. "Mrs. Whitfield, I'm Tobias, the resort photographer. Victoria mentioned you'd like some photos taken during your stay. Please call me Carolyn. And yes, I want to document everything. This is the first time in my adult life I'm doing something entirely for myself." Tobias smiled. "That's the best kind of photo shoot. Shall we start with some shots on your terrace? The light is perfect right now." For the next hour, Tobias captured me in ways I had never been photographed before. Not as someone's mother or grandmother or caregiver, but as myself. Me laughing as the ocean breeze caught my hair. Me raising a champagne glass in a toast to the setting sun. Me simply standing and existing in my own space, comfortable in my own skin. "You're a natural at this," Tobias said, reviewing the images on his camera. "You have such confidence in front of the lens." I'm feeling confident for the first time in years. It shows. These photos are going to be stunning. That evening I had dinner on my terrace as promised. The lobster was accompanied by exotic vegetables I couldn't even name, prepared with spices that made my taste buds dance. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, watching the stars emerge one by one in the clear tropical sky. My phone had been buzzing periodically throughout the evening, but I ignored it completely. Whatever crisis was unfolding at home was no longer my emergency to manage. After dinner, I uploaded my second photo. The shot of me on the terrace at sunset, champagne glass in hand, the ocean stretching behind me like liquid gold. My caption read, "Day 1 of putting myself first. 74 years old and finally learning what I'm worth. The view is spectacular from here #selfcare #nevertullet." The responses came flooding in again, but this time, mixed among the supportive comments from friends and acquaintances, there were messages from people I hadn't expected to hear from. Marisol, who had been my housekeeper for 15 years before retiring, wrote, "Mrs. Whitfield, you look absolutely radiant. I always worried about how that woman treated you. You deserve every bit of this happiness." Dr. Adelaide Marsh, my former supervisor at the hospital, commented, "Carolyn, you're always taking care of everyone else. So proud to see you taking care of yourself. Enjoy every moment." But the comment that surprised me most came from someone I hadn't heard from in months. My neighbor Hollis's wife, Junie. "Carolyn, I don't know what's happening with your family, but Wade has been at your house 3 times today pounding on the door. He looks frantic. Are you okay?" I messaged Junie privately. "I'm perfectly fine and exactly where I need to be. If Wade asks, please tell him I'm safe and that I'll return when I'm ready." Her response came quickly. "Good for you. We've all seen how they treat you. About time you stood up for yourself." So others had noticed. The humiliation hadn't been as private as I had thought. Somehow that made me feel both embarrassed and vindicated at the same time. I turned off my phone and prepared for bed in my luxurious suite. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new experiences, new opportunities to rediscover who Carolyn Whitfield really was underneath decades of self-sacrifice and people-pleasing. But tonight, I was going to sleep peacefully for the first time in years, with no one to answer to but myself. I woke naturally as the sun painted my suite in shades of gold and coral. No alarm clock, no urgent phone calls, no demands for my immediate attention, just the gentle sound of waves and birdsong welcoming me to my second day of freedom. After a leisurely breakfast on my terrace, fresh mango, coconut yogurt, and coffee that tasted like liquid sunshine, I finally turned on my phone. The screen immediately lit up with notifications, 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, and 12 voicemails. The desperation was palpable, even through digital communication. "Wade. Mom, please call me. We're worried sick. Dabney. Carolyn, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. Wade again. I went to your house. Hollis said you're traveling. Where did you go? Dabney, from what appeared to be a friend's phone. Fine. Be selfish. The children are asking for you, but I guess you don't care about them. The voicemails told an even more interesting story. I listened to them while getting ready for my day, choosing a flowing white linen outfit that made me feel like a bohemian goddess. The first was from Wade, his voice tight with controlled panic. Mom, it's me. Dabney said something about you not coming to help with Christmas preparations. I don't understand what's going on. Please call me back. By the third voicemail, Wade's tone had shifted. Mom, I drove by your house. It looks empty. Hollis wouldn't tell me where you went. Just said you were taking care of yourself and that I should think about why. What does that mean? Please just call me. But it was Dabney's voicemail that truly revealed the depth of their panic. Carolyn, enough with the drama. I don't know what game you're playing, but the children are upset. My mother is asking questions, and you're ruining Christmas for everyone. Whatever you're trying to prove, you've made your point. Now come home and act like a responsible grandmother. Act like a responsible grandmother. As if responsibility only flowed in one direction in families. As if I had no right to expect responsibility from them in return. I deleted all the messages without responding to any of them. Today, Tobias had arranged a yacht excursion. We would sail to a secluded cove where I could swim in water so clear you could see tropical fish from the surface, then return for lunch at the resort's most exclusive restaurant. As we boarded the yacht, a gleaming vessel with polished wood and pristine white sails, I felt like I was stepping into a movie about someone else's glamorous life. The captain, a weathered man with kind eyes and gentle hands, welcomed me aboard like visiting royalty. First time sailing, Mrs. Whitfield. First time doing most things, apparently. I laughed. Tobias was already positioning himself to capture the moment. As we pulled away from shore, the resort shrank behind us while the endless expanse of turquoise ocean opened before us. I stood at the bow, letting the salt spray kiss my face, feeling more alive than I had in decades. You know, Captain Eli called over the sound of wind and waves. In 30 years of sailing these waters, I've seen a lot of people come and go. But there's something different about the ones who are here for themselves versus the ones who are here trying to escape something. Which one am I? I asked, genuinely curious about his assessment. You're neither, he replied with a grin. You're here because you finally figured out who you are. That's the rarest kind of passenger I get. His words settled into my heart like a blessing. At the secluded cove, I did something I hadn't done since Wade was a child. I went swimming in my underwear. Well, technically in the expensive bikini I had bought but never worn, telling myself I was too old, too modest, too something. But here, floating in water so warm and clear it felt like a liquid embrace, I realized too old was just another cage I had built for myself. Tobias captured it all. Me laughing as a school of colorful fish swam around me. Me floating peacefully with my eyes closed and face turned toward the sun, me standing in the shallows with water dripping from my hair and a look of pure joy on my face. These are going to be some of the most beautiful photos I've ever taken, he said as we prepared to sail back. Why? Because they're real. Most people pose for the camera, trying to show others what they want them to see. You're not performing for anyone. You're just being. That afternoon I uploaded my third photo, the one of me swimming with a tropical fish. At 74, I just went swimming in the Caribbean for the first time. Turns out it's never too late to dive into life. Hashtag living my best life, hashtag never too late. The responses were immediate and overwhelming. Former colleagues, old friends, neighbors, all celebrating my adventure and sharing their own stories of late-in-life discoveries. But buried among the supportive messages were increasingly frantic communications from my family. Loretta, my sister, had been contacted by Wade. Her message was direct. Carolyn, Wade called me in tears, asking if I know where you are. He says Dabney thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. I told him I'd talk to you. Call me. I called Loretta from the yacht as we sailed back to shore. Carolyn. Her voice was sharp with worry. Are you all right? Wade made it sound like you just disappeared. I'm fine, Loretta. Better than fine. I'm in the Caribbean having the time of my life. Silence. The Caribbean. Carolyn, what's going on? I told her everything. The phone call from Dabney, the demand that I clean her house to earn Christmas dinner, the years of manipulation and exclusion, the systematic way they had made me feel like a burden in my own family. Loretta listened without interruption, occasionally making sounds of disgust or disbelief. "Oh, Carolyn," she said when I finished. "How long has this been going on?" "Years." But I kept telling myself it was normal family friction. That Dabney was just protective of her nuclear family. That I was being too sensitive. Sensitive. "Carolyn, they turned you into an unpaid servant and convinced you it was love." Hearing someone else articulate what I had been feeling was like having a weight lifted from my chest. "Loretta, I need you to do something for me," I continued. "I need you to start making some phone calls, to cousins, to family, to anyone who might have heard Dabney and Wade's version of why I'm not at family events. I have a feeling there are more lies to uncover. Consider it done. And Carolyn, I'm proud of you. This takes courage." After I hung up, I sat on the yacht's deck watching the resort come back into view. But I wasn't thinking about the beautiful scenery or my afternoon swimming with tropical fish. I was thinking about all the family gatherings I had missed, not by choice but by exclusion. How many lies had Dabney told about me? How many people believed I had become a bitter, reclusive old woman who rejected her own family? That evening, I dined at the resort's signature restaurant, an elegant establishment where every table had an ocean view and the menu featured dishes I had never even heard of. I ordered the tasting menu with wine pairings, surrendering completely to the experience of being cared for, catered to, treated like someone whose pleasure mattered. The other diners were mostly couples, and I noticed some of them glancing at me curiously. A woman dining alone, clearly enjoying herself, no visible sadness or loneliness. I realized I was probably a puzzle to them. Wasn't I supposed to be lonely? Shouldn't I be missing my family on Christmas Eve? But I wasn't lonely. For the first time in years, I was in my own company without apology, and I found that I rather enjoyed it. Halfway through my meal, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer it. "Carolyn, this is Renata, Dabney's mother." I nearly choked on my wine. Renata, the woman who had taken my place at every important family event, was calling me directly. "Hello, Renata," I managed, setting down my fork. "Carolyn, I need to talk to you. Something isn't right here. Dabney is telling me you've abandoned the family, that you're having some kind of mental breakdown, but the photos you're posting online show someone who looks happier than I've ever seen you." My heart began to race. "What exactly did Dabney tell you?" "She said you called her yesterday screaming about Christmas, making unreasonable demands, and then just disappeared when she tried to set boundaries with you." The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, even after everything, Dabney was rewriting the narrative to make herself the victim. "Renata, that's not what happened at all." I told her the truth, about the cleaning demand, about the years of exclusion, about being treated like hired help rather than family. Renata listened with increasing silence. "Carolyn," she said finally, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Dabney told me you have early signs of dementia, that you get confused about things, that your memory isn't reliable anymore. She said that's why you sometimes think you're being excluded, when really you're just forgetting conversations or misunderstanding situations." The manipulation was so much deeper than I had imagined. They hadn't just excluded me, they had created an entire false narrative about my mental competency to justify it. "Renata, I am 74 years old. I manage my own finances. I volunteer at the Children's Hospital. I maintain my home. I remember every detail of every slight because they happen regularly and are impossible to forget." "I was afraid of that," Renata said softly. "Carolyn, I think my daughter has been lying to both of us." Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, and I celebrated it by having breakfast in bed while video chatting with Loretta. She had spent the previous day making phone calls, and what she had discovered was both shocking and vindicating. "Carolyn, you need to know what I found out," she said, her face serious on the laptop screen. "I called Calhoun. You remember our cousin whose wedding was last spring?" I remembered. Wade had told me Calhoun specifically didn't want me there because family events made me emotional after losing my husband. I had been hurt but understood. Calhoun was furious when I explained why I was calling. He said Wade told him you had said weddings reminded you too much of what you'd lost, and that you'd asked not to be invited. Calhoun said he wanted you there and was confused when Wade said you preferred to stay home. My coffee cup rattled against its saucer as my hand shook. What else did you find out? I called Dalton. He's the one they told you had early dementia symptoms. Wade had called him 2 years ago to tell him you were showing signs of mental decline, and that we should all be patient with you if you seemed confused or upset at family gatherings. The scope of the deception was staggering. They hadn't just isolated me from events, they had systematically destroyed my reputation within our extended family, creating a narrative that painted me as mentally unstable, emotionally fragile, and socially inappropriate. There's more, Loretta continued. I also called Aunt Verna. She said Wade had told her you were going through severe depression after your husband's death, and that unexpected visitors or phone calls made you agitated. Loretta, my husband died 15 years ago. Grieved. Healed. I moved forward with my life. I know that. We all know that. But they've been using it as an excuse for years to explain your absence from family events. I set down my coffee and walked to the window of my suite. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, unchanged by the revelations reshaping my understanding of the past 3 years. But I felt changed, fundamentally altered by the knowledge of how deeply and systematically I had been betrayed. They didn't just exclude me, I said slowly. They convinced everyone else that I excluded myself. Exactly. And Carolyn, there's something else. I called the children's hospital where you volunteer. They said you haven't missed a shift in 2 years, and that you're one of their most reliable volunteers. They were actually considering you for a special recognition award. So much for Dabney's claims that I was becoming unreliable and confused. Loretta, I need you to organize something for me, I said, my mind working through the implications of everything she had discovered. What do you need? I want you to arrange a family meeting. Contact everyone you can. All our cousins, Aunt Verna, the neighbors who know us well. Tell them we need to discuss some misunderstandings about my recent behavior. Don't tell them I'm organizing it. Tell them you're worried about the family situation and want to clear the air. When? Tomorrow, December 26th, at my house. I'll be flying home tonight. Loretta's eyebrows shot up. You're coming back. Are you sure you're ready? I'm not coming back the same woman who left, I replied. I'm coming back as someone who knows her worth and won't accept anything less than respect. After ending the call, I spent my final day in paradise exactly as I wanted to. Getting a massage on the beach, having a long lunch overlooking the ocean, and taking what would become my most powerful photograph yet. Tobias captured me at sunset on my last day, sitting alone at a beachside table with a glass of champagne, the ocean stretching behind me, my face serene but determined. I was wearing the emerald evening gown I had brought but never expected to have the courage to wear. In the photo, I looked like a woman who had found herself, who knew exactly who she was and what she would and wouldn't tolerate. I posted it with a caption I knew would send shock waves through my family. Final night in paradise. Tomorrow I return home, but I'm bringing this version of myself with me. Some conversations are long overdue. The responses were immediate and intense. Friends and acquaintances expressed excitement about my return, but buried among them were increasingly desperate messages from Wade and Dabney. Wade. Mom, please call me before you come home. We need to talk. Dabney. Carolyn, whatever you think happened, we can work it out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. But the message that caught my attention came from an unexpected source. Emery, my eldest granddaughter, writing from what was clearly a friend's account. Grandma Carolyn, I saw your pictures and you look so happy. Mom and Dad keep saying you're sick and confused, but you don't look sick. You look beautiful. Miss you. Are you really okay? My heart broke and soared at the same time. At least one of my grandchildren could see through the lies being told about me. I replied carefully. My darling Emery, I am perfectly healthy and very happy. I've just been learning to take better care of myself. I love you more than you know, and I'll see you soon. That evening, as I packed my beautiful clothes and prepared to leave paradise, I felt no sadness about the end of my vacation. Instead, I felt the quiet confidence of a woman who had remembered who she was and was ready to fight for her place in the world. I landed at home at 10 p.m. on December 25th, Christmas night. Hollis was waiting for me at the airport as arranged. His weathered face creased with concern and curiosity. "Carolyn," he said as I emerged from the terminal. "You look like a completely different person." "I feel like a completely different person," I replied, surprised by the truth of it. During the drive home, Hollis updated me on the situation. "Wade's been by your house at least twice a day since you left. Yesterday he brought some man in a suit. Looked like a lawyer to me. They used a key to get in." My blood ran cold. "They went inside my house." "Yeah. Called them out on it. Told them it wasn't right to go through your things without permission. Wade got all defensive, said they were worried about your mental state and needed to make sure you were okay." "Did they take anything?" "They came out carrying a box of papers. I heard the lawyer say something about bank statements and medical records. So they had violated my privacy, searching through my personal documents. The anger I felt was ice-cold and calculating. They had just provided me with evidence of their true motivations and given me additional legal grounds for what I was about to do." "Hollis, what did you tell them about where I was?" "Just that you were taking care of yourself, and that they should think about why a woman like you would need to get so far away from her family." I squeezed his arm gratefully. "You're a good friend." My house felt different when I walked through the door. Not because anything had been moved or taken, but because I was different. The woman who had left here 4 days ago had been worn down by years of subtle manipulation and emotional neglect. The woman returning was armored with self-knowledge and righteous anger. I went straight to my desk and checked the drawers. Several files had been disturbed, including my financial records and medical documents. The violation felt visceral, like someone had rifled through my underwear drawer. But I was also coldly satisfied. They had just given me exactly what I needed for tomorrow's confrontation. I spent the rest of the evening preparing. I printed out copies of all my social media posts from the past 4 days, creating a visual timeline of my mental breakdown that showed a woman looking happier and more confident than she had in years. I gathered bank statements that proved my financial competency and independence. I collected letters of recommendation from the Children's Hospital that attested to my reliability and mental sharpness. Most importantly, I prepared talking points that would expose the full scope of Dabney and Wade's manipulation. Not emotional accusations, but facts, dates, specific examples. A systematic presentation of evidence that would be impossible to dismiss or explain away. I went to bed in my own home for the first time in 4 days, but I barely slept. Not from anxiety. I was strangely calm about what was to come. I lay awake because I was planning, strategizing, preparing for what would either be the beginning of my family's redemption or the end of my relationship with them entirely. Either outcome was acceptable to me now. December 26th dawned gray and cold, matching the seriousness of what was to come. I dressed carefully in a charcoal wool dress that conveyed both dignity and authority, styled my silver hair in an elegant chignon, and applied my makeup with precision. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman prepared for battle. They began arriving at 1 p.m., just as Loretta had arranged. First came Aunt Verna, her face etched with confusion and concern, then Cousin Calhoun, followed by Dalton and his wife, Hollis and Junie from next door, and Mrs. Calloway from down the street, who had known me for 15 years and had witnessed much of my family's dynamics. Loretta arrived last, carrying a folder thick with notes from her phone conversations. When she hugged me, she whispered, "Are you ready for this?" I've never been more ready for anything in my life. We had just settled in my living room when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Wade's car in my driveway, with Dabney in the passenger seat and a man in a suit in the back. Presumably the lawyer Hollis had seen. "Perfect timing," I murmured and opened the door. Wade looked haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days. Dabney was pale and nervous, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked almost like fear. The lawyer looked like he wished he was anywhere else. "Mom," Wade began, his voice strained. "What is all this? Why are all these people here?" "Come in," I said calmly. "You're just in time." They entered to find my living room full of family members and neighbors, all looking at them with expressions ranging from confusion to disapproval. Dabney immediately went on the defensive. "Carolyn, if you're trying to create some kind of scene, this isn't the way to handle family matters." "Sit down," I said, and there was something in my voice that made all three of them comply immediately. I moved to the center of the room where everyone could see me clearly. The afternoon light streaming through my windows seemed to highlight me like a spotlight on a stage. For the past 4 days, I began in a clear, strong voice. "Some of you have been contacted by my son and daughter-in-law with concerns about my mental state. You've been told I'm having some kind of breakdown, that I've abandoned my family, that I'm acting irrationally." I pulled out my phone and showed the first photo. Me on the airplane with champagne, smiling broadly. This is what my alleged breakdown looks like. A 74-year-old woman taking her first solo vacation and looking happier than she has in years. I moved through the photos one by one, swimming in the Caribbean, dining alone with confidence, standing in an evening gown with quiet dignity. This is what abandoning my family looks like. A woman finally putting herself first after decades of being treated like unpaid help. The room was completely silent. Wade and Dabney sat frozen, clearly unprepared for this level of organization and presentation. "But before we discuss my recent breakdown," I continued, "I think we need to discuss some lies that have been told about me over the past few years." I turned to cousin Calhoun. "Calhoun, could you tell everyone what Wade told you about why I wasn't at your wedding?" Calhoun shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Wade. "He said you told him weddings made you too sad because they reminded you of losing Uncle James." "Did I ever tell you that, Wade?" Wade's face was ashen. "No," he whispered. "In fact, Calhoun, I never received an invitation to your wedding at all. I only found out about it afterward." The gasps around the room were audible. Aunt Verna leaned forward in her chair. "Carolyn, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that for 3 years my son and daughter-in-law have systematically excluded me from family events, and then created false narratives to explain my absence." I turned to Dalton. "Dalton, what did Wade tell you about my mental state?" Dalton looked deeply uncomfortable. "He said you were showing early signs of dementia, and that we should be patient if you seemed confused or agitated at family gatherings." "And how did I seem at the last family gathering you saw me at?" "You seemed perfectly fine. Sharp as ever, actually." Dabney finally found her voice. "Carolyn, you're taking everything out of context. We were trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I interrupted. "From my own family. From participating in my grandchildren's lives." I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. "Let me share with you the phone call that prompted my breakdown." I recounted Dabney's demand that I clean her house to earn Christmas dinner, word for word. The reactions around the room ranged from shock to disgust. "That's not how it happened," Dabney protested weakly. "Would you like me to play the recording?" I asked calmly. "Because I recorded it." I hadn't, but the bluff worked. Dabney's face went white. "Now," I continued, "let's discuss what happened while I was gone. Loretta, could you share what you discovered about the stories being told about me?" Loretta stood up with her folder. "I spent yesterday calling family members to understand why Carolyn had been absent from so many events. What I found was a systematic campaign of lies designed to make everyone believe Carolyn was mentally unstable, depressed, and socially inappropriate." She read from her notes. Each lie, each manipulation, each carefully constructed excuse that had isolated me from my extended family. "But the most concerning discovery," Loretta continued, "is that Wade and Dabney entered Carolyn's house without permission while she was away, and removed personal documents." All eyes turned to the lawyer, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Is that true? Aunt Verna asked, her voice sharp with disapproval. The lawyer cleared his throat. I was consulted about concerns regarding Mrs. Whitfield's mental capacity and financial decision-making. Based on what evidence? Yes. Based on reports of concerning behavior, such as making impulsive, expensive travel decisions and posting unusual content on social media. The absurdity of it was breathtaking. So a woman taking a vacation and posting photos of herself looking happy constituted evidence of mental incompetence. Hollis stood up from his corner. I've been Carolyn's neighbor for 20 years. I've never seen any signs of mental decline. What I have seen is her being treated with increasing disrespect by her own family. Hollis, Wade began. No, Hollis cut him off. I've watched you and your wife make that woman feel unwelcome in her own family. I've seen her face after your visits, how defeated she looks. And I've watched her light up when those grandchildren come around, only to have them pulled away the minute they start enjoying themselves too much with their grandmother. Junie nodded in agreement. We all have. The whole neighborhood has noticed. Wade buried his face in his hands. Dabney sat rigid with anger and humiliation. Now, I said, moving to the final phase of my presentation, let's talk about what happens next. I looked directly at the lawyer. Mr. Tillman, he replied quietly. Mr. Tillman, I assume you were hired to help my son gain some kind of legal control over my finances or medical decisions, based on claims of mental incompetence. He nodded reluctantly. I want you to understand something. I am a 74-year-old woman in perfect mental health. I volunteer regularly at the Children's Hospital, where I'm being considered for a special recognition award. I manage my own finances, maintain my own home, and make my own decisions. I pulled out my bank statements, my letters of recommendation, my medical records. You're welcome to review these documents, which show a woman who is financially stable, mentally sharp, and physically healthy. What you will not find is any evidence that I require someone else to manage my affairs. Mr. Tillman was already packing up his briefcase. Mrs. Whitfield, I believe there may have been some misunderstandings about the situation. I think it would be best if I withdrew from this matter. I think that would be wise. Agreed. After he left, the room fell into heavy silence. Wade looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean for, Wade? I just wanted to keep the peace. Dabney felt like you were always criticizing her parenting, always undermining her decisions. It seemed easier to limit the conflicts by excluding me, by managing the situations where conflicts might arise. I sat down across from him. Wade, when you managed situations by excluding me, you weren't preventing conflicts. You were choosing your wife's comfort over your mother's dignity. Dabney finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid you would turn the children against me. You're so good with them, so natural. I felt like I was always competing with this perfect grandmother who had raised the perfect son. It was the first honest thing she had said in years. Dabney, I was never trying to compete with you. I was trying to love my grandchildren. But you made it look so easy, and the children always seemed happier with you than with me, because I wasn't their disciplinarian. I wasn't responsible for bedtimes and vegetables and homework. I got to be the fun one because you were doing the hard work of parenting. That's how grandparent relationships are supposed to work. Dabney began to cry. Not the manipulative tears I had seen before, but genuine remorse. I ruined everything, she whispered. I was so insecure that I destroyed your relationship with your son and your grandchildren. The room remained silent, everyone processing the weight of what had been revealed. The question now, I said finally, is what we do about it. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where Wade had played as a child, where I had hoped my grandchildren would play someday. I want you all to understand something. This isn't just about hurt feelings or family drama. This is about a systematic campaign to isolate me from my family and damage my reputation within our community. It's about financial documents being stolen from my home. It's about my grandchildren being told lies about their grandmother. I turned back to face the room. I am prepared to take legal action for defamation, emotional distress, and invasion of privacy. I am prepared to cut ties with anyone who cannot treat me with basic respect. And I am prepared to rebuild my life without family members who see me as a burden rather than a blessing. But I'm also prepared to consider reconciliation, under very specific conditions. Wade and Dabney both looked up hopefully. First, you will immediately begin family therapy, both couples therapy and individual therapy, to understand why you thought this behavior was acceptable. They nodded eagerly. Second, you will have honest conversations with Emery, Bo, and Tate about the lies you told them about their grandmother. Age-appropriate conversations, but honest ones. Yes, Dabney whispered. Third, you will contact every person you've lied to about my mental state, my behavior, or my desires regarding family events, and you will correct those lies. We'll do it, Wade said. And fourth, you will give me time and space to decide whether I can forgive you. That may take months, may take years. It may never happen at all. But it will be my decision, made on my timeline, without pressure or manipulation from either of you. I looked around the room at the faces of my extended family and neighbors. I want everyone here to understand that Carolyn Whitfield is not now, nor has she ever been, a confused old woman who doesn't know her own mind. I am a woman who spent 74 years learning to value herself, and I will not go backward. The applause started slowly, Loretta clapping first, then Hollis, then others joining in. It built to a sound that filled my living room, my house, my heart. It was the sound of respect, the sound of recognition, the sound of a woman who had reclaimed her voice and would never be silenced again. The week following the confrontation passed in a blur of phone calls, visits, and the slow, difficult work of rebuilding trust. True to their word, Wade and Dabney had immediately begun therapy sessions, both individual and couples counseling. The conversations with the children had been the hardest part for everyone involved. Emery, at 12, was old enough to understand that her parents had lied to her about why Grandma Carolyn hadn't been around as much. Bo, at 9, was confused but gradually beginning to understand. Little Tate, at 5, was simply happy that Grandma was coming to visit again. I had insisted on neutral ground for our first post-confrontation family meeting, the local library's community room, where we could talk without the emotional weight of anyone's home environment. Grandma Carolyn, Emery said the moment I walked into the room. I'm sorry I believed them when they said you didn't want to see us. My heart broke and healed simultaneously. I knelt down to her level. Sweetheart, you have nothing to apologize for. You believed what the adults in your life told you. That's what children are supposed to do. But I should have known better. You never acted like you didn't want to be around us. Emery, you are 12 years old. It is not your job to fact-check your parents or figure out when adults are lying. That responsibility belongs to the adults. Wade and Dabney sat quietly during this exchange, both looking like they had aged years in the past week. How are the therapy sessions going? I asked them directly. Hard, Wade admitted. Really hard. The therapist is helping me understand that I stopped seeing you as my mother at some point and started seeing you as a problem to manage. And you, Dabney. Dabney's eyes were red-rimmed from crying. I'm working on understanding why I felt so threatened by your relationship with Wade and the children. Dr. Yancey, our therapist, says it stems from my own insecurities about not being good enough. Are you learning anything that might help you understand why your behavior was so hurtful? I'm learning that I was so afraid of losing my family that I tried to eliminate what I saw as competition, instead of figuring out how to build something bigger that included everyone. It was a start, not forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that, but acknowledgement, and the beginning of understanding. Over the following weeks I watched them work. Dabney made the difficult phone calls to every family member she had lied to about me, explaining that she had been wrong and asking for their patience as she worked to repair the damage. Wade reached out to neighbors and acquaintances to correct the false narratives about my mental state. The hardest conversation was with Renata, Dabney's mother, who was struggling to understand how her daughter had become someone capable of such systematic manipulation. "Carolyn," Renata said during one of our weekly coffee meetings, "I keep asking myself where I went wrong in raising her." Renata, Dabney, is a grown woman who made her own choices. But I think it's worth examining why she felt she had to destroy another woman to feel secure. "What do you mean?" "I mean that maybe we need to look at how we raise daughters to see other women, especially older women, as threats instead of allies. Dabney saw me as competition for Wade's love instead of someone who could enrich their family." Renata was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. I think I might have been jealous of you too in the beginning. You were this accomplished, independent woman who had raised Wade so well, and I felt like Dabney couldn't measure up. And instead of teaching Dabney to value those qualities and learn from them, I supported her in trying to eliminate them. It was a hard truth, but Renata accepted it with grace. 3 months after my return from Paradise, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I sold my house, not because I was running away or making emotional decisions, but because I had realized I didn't want to spend my remaining years in a house filled with memories of being diminished. I wanted to create new memories in a space that reflected who I had become, not who I had been. I found a beautiful townhouse in the historic district, walking distance from the children's hospital where I volunteered, and close enough to my grandchildren for regular visits, but far enough away to maintain my independence. The day I moved, Wade and Dabney came to help, along with the children. It was the first time we had worked together as a family in years, and while there were still awkward moments and careful conversations, there was also something new. Respect. "Grandma Carolyn," Bo said as we unpacked boxes in my new living room. "Your new house is really pretty." "Thank you, sweetheart. I chose it because it makes me happy." "Is it okay that it makes you happy?" Emery asked, a question that revealed how much she had absorbed from the adult conversations around her. "It is absolutely okay for me to choose things that make me happy," I replied. "In fact, it's important that I do that." Dabney overheard this exchange and paused in her unpacking. "Kids, could you help Dad with the boxes in the kitchen? I want to talk to Grandma Carolyn for a minute." When we were alone, Dabney sat down across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Carolyn, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I am deeply, genuinely sorry for what I did to you. Not just the Christmas phone call, but everything. The years of manipulation and exclusion and lies. I know you are, Dabney. But I also want you to know that I'm not just sorry because I got caught, or because it blew up in my face. I'm sorry because I've come to understand how much harm I caused. Not just to you, but to my children and my husband." She paused, struggling with her words. "Dr. Yancey helped me understand that when I tried to eliminate you from our lives, I wasn't protecting my family. I was damaging it. I deprived my children of a relationship with their grandmother. I put Wade in an impossible position between his mother and his wife. And I turned myself into someone I don't recognize. What have you learned about why you did it?" "I learned that I was operating from a scarcity mindset. I thought there wasn't enough love to go around, that if Wade loved you, there would be less love for me. If the children adored their grandmother, they wouldn't need their mother as much." She looked directly at me for the first time in the conversation. "But love isn't finite, is it? Love expands. Having you in our lives more wouldn't have meant less love for me. It would have meant more love for everyone." It was the most mature, self-aware thing I had ever heard Dabney say. "Are you committed to continuing the therapy?" "For as long as it takes. Carolyn, I want to be the kind of woman my daughter can be proud of. The kind of wife Wade deserves. And the kind of daughter-in-law who honors what you gave to our family instead of trying to erase it." I reached across and squeezed her hand. "Then we can build something new, Dabney. Not what we had before, something better." 6 months after my Caribbean awakening, I did something I had been thinking about since my conversation with Carmen, the flight attendant who had brought me champagne on my flight to freedom. I established the Carolyn Whitfield Foundation for Women's Dignity. The mission was simple: to support women over 60 who were experiencing emotional abuse, manipulation, or systematic exclusion within their families. We provided legal assistance, counseling services, and sometimes just a safe space for women to tell their stories and be believed. The response was overwhelming. Within the first month, we had received over 200 inquiries from women across the country who had experienced similar treatment. Some were being financially controlled by adult children. Others were being emotionally manipulated by daughters-in-law who saw them as threats. Many had been isolated from grandchildren through systematic campaigns of lies and exclusion. Dorothy, a 71-year-old woman from Ohio, was our first major success story. Her son and daughter-in-law had convinced her entire extended family that she was becoming dangerous and unstable, citing her inappropriate behavior at family gatherings. The inappropriate behavior. She had questioned why her daughter-in-law was putting her 5-year-old granddaughter on a restrictive diet, and had brought the child a sandwich when she said she was hungry. With the Foundation's help, Dorothy was able to expose the lies, reconnect with family members who had been told she was becoming mentally incompetent, and establish new boundaries that protected both her dignity and her relationship with her granddaughter. "Carolyn," Dorothy said during one of our phone calls, "you saved my life. Not dramatically. I wasn't going to hurt myself. But you saved the life I was supposed to be living." The foundation grew rapidly, funded initially by my own savings, but soon supported by donations from women who had heard our stories and recognized themselves in them. We established support groups, both in person and online, where women could share their experiences without judgment. One of our most popular services became what we called dignity documentation, helping women document patterns of emotional abuse and manipulation so they could present clear, factual cases to family members or, when necessary, legal authorities. The most delicate part of rebuilding our family relationships was with Emery, Bo, and Tate. Children are resilient, but they're also perceptive, and they had absorbed more of the adult dysfunction than anyone had realized. Emery in particular struggled with trust issues. At 12, she was old enough to understand that she had been lied to by her parents, but young enough to worry that other adults might lie to her too. "Grandma Carolyn," she said during one of our weekly afternoon walks, "how do I know when adults are telling me the truth?" It was a heartbreaking question from someone so young. "That's a very thoughtful question, Emery. What do you think?" "I think I should look at what people do, not just what they say. Mom and Dad said you didn't want to see us, but you always seemed happy when you did see us. That's very wise. What else? And I think if someone tries to keep me away from people I love, I should ask why. Like, if there's a good reason, they should be able to explain it without getting mad or saying I'm too young to understand." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Emery, you have learned something that many adults never figure out. Trust your instincts, ask questions, and don't accept, because I said so, as an answer to important questions about relationships. But what if the adults get mad at me for asking questions? Then that tells you something important about those adults, doesn't it?" She nodded solemnly. "Yeah. It tells me they don't want me to think for myself." Bo, at 9, processed the situation differently. He was more focused on the concrete changes than the emotional complexities. "Grandma Carolyn," he said during one of our art sessions, "are you not sad anymore?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Mom said you were sad all the time, and that's why you couldn't come to my birthday party. But you don't seem sad." "I was sad, Bo, but not in the way your mom meant. I was sad because I was missing out on time with you and Emery and Tate. But I wasn't sad because something was wrong with me. I was sad because something was wrong with how our family was treating each other. And now it's better. Now we're working on making it better. It takes time to fix things when they've been broken for a while." Tate, at 5, was the most adaptable. He simply accepted that Grandma Carolyn was around more now and that everyone seemed happier. Children that young live in the present moment, which was perhaps the healthiest response of all. My relationship with Wade required the most careful reconstruction. The dynamic between a mother and an adult child is complex under the best circumstances, and we had years of dysfunction to untangle. "Mom," he said during one of our monthly dinner meetings, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Of course. Do you think you can ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. Wade, I think forgiveness is possible, but it's not something that happens overnight, and it's not unconditional. What do you mean? I mean that forgiveness requires sustained change, not just apologies. It requires you to understand not just what you did, but why you did it so you can make sure it never happens again. I'm working on that in therapy. I know you are. But I also need to see evidence of change. In how you handle conflicts with Dabney, how you prioritize our relationship, and how you talk about me to others. He nodded, looking uncomfortable but determined. Mom, can I tell you what I've learned about myself in therapy? If you want to. I learned that I became conflict avoidant to an unhealthy degree. When Dabney and you had different opinions or approaches, instead of managing the situation like an adult, I would just remove one of the parties from the equation. Usually you. And I told myself it was because you were the stronger person, the one who could handle being excluded better. But that wasn't fair to you. And it wasn't really true either. What do you mean? I mean that I saw your strength as a reason to treat you with less consideration, not more. I thought because you were capable and independent, you didn't need the same care and attention that Dabney did. It was a profound insight and one that resonated deeply with me. Wade, do you understand how that affected our relationship? I think so. I think it made you feel like your strength was being punished, like the reward for being capable was being ignored. Exactly. And it taught your children that love comes with conditions, that family relationships are something you have to earn rather than something you're entitled to simply by virtue of being family. How do I fix that? You keep doing the work you're doing. You keep going to therapy. You keep examining your behaviors and motivations. And you keep showing up consistently, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. Of all the people involved in this family crisis, Dabney showed the most dramatic change. The woman who had once commanded me to clean her house in order to earn Christmas dinner gradually became someone I could have real conversations with. Someone who was genuinely working to understand and change her behavior.